equal. So she was well respected, highly regarded. So that's a little bit about the Queen of Sheba. Verse 2, would somebody like to read? Verse 2. Dave, you want to read? You got a mic right over there. Okay.
Verse 2. She arrived in Jerusalem with a large group of attendants and a great caravan of camels loaded with spices, large quantities of gold, and precious jewels. When she met with Solomon, she talked with him about everything she had on her mind.
Thank you. She came to Jerusalem with a great, mine says retinue, or entourage, right? A bunch of people, a bunch of animals, whole bunch of stuff. And she brought all this stuff, camels with spices, much gold, and precious stones, etc. Why did she have to bring all of this stuff? Any idea why she had to bring all this stuff and all these?
Was it a custom to bring gifts to a king as from a country, or meaning somebody of high place in that other country when they visit the king, to bring gifts, as well as the king gives gifts in return back to them?
Yeah, for sure. It was custom. It was a sign of respect. And we're going to learn more about this later, but it was also part of like a tax, that was implemented by Solomon in the kingdom. To get a company with Solomon, you actually had to pay. So we're going to learn about that later. The second half of the verse says, she spoke with him about all that was in her heart. So why did she have to travel so far for answers? Could nobody at home answer her questions? Were there no wise men? And I guess the answer is no, right? She had to go see Solomon. As we read back in chapter 4, so let's go to 1 Kings chapter 4, and we're going to read verses 30 through 40. 1 Kings chapter 4, verses 30 through 34. Thus Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all men of the east and of all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Israelite, and Heman, Chakol, Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. Also he spoke of trees, from the cedar tree of Lebanon even to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He spoke of animals, of birds, of creeping things, and of fish, and all the men of all nations from all the kings of the earth who heard his wisdom came to hear this wisdom of Solomon. So that was back in chapter 4. We can go back to chapter 10. So his wisdom and his knowledge surpassed all on earth, and those who had questions sought his audience, right? Let's continue. Chapter 10, verse 3 through 6. Who would like to read that? Jazz?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing so difficult for the king that he could not explain it to her. And when the queen Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his servants, the service of his waiters, and their apparel, his cupbearers, and his entryway, by which he went up to the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. Then she said to the king, "It was a true report which I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom."
Cool. Thank you. So Solomon answered all of her questions, all of them. He was able to answer every one. Nothing was too difficult or challenging him for him to answer. So I'm going to put it out there. What do you guys think her questions were? What kind of questions do you think she had? Just wondering. Any idea, Miriam?
So, in looking up this chapter, some of the questions that she had, and the reason why she didn't want to come, she didn't send anybody else. She could have sent any emissary to find out about Solomon's wisdom, but she came to see it for herself. But she asked questions in like riddles and parables to see if he could answer her questions. So that was a kind of to test his intelligence, really, and to see if he was as wise as everybody was saying. So in those days, like when we saw in Samson, it was accustomed to have riddles. Riddles were not like children play games and they ask riddles. These were riddles that were based on testing people's true knowledge.
Anybody else? D?
I mean, I don't really know for sure, unless there's a for sure answer. But I imagine it will be a lot of what you read when you cross-referenced. What passage was that when you cross-referenced?
Chapter 4, verse 30 through 34.
Mhm.
About, animals.
Animals, like
yeah.
how the world works. I wonder if there
What
was
is the
even
meaning
some-
of life?
what kind of Earth are we on? How does the planets and the sun all? No. We're not going there. We're not going there.
Is
We're
it a
not going there.
dome?
No. Yeah, philosophy, probably a lot of philosophical questions, how the mind and the body works, probably a lot of that stuff.
Anybody else? Because it says she spoke with him about all that was in her heart. I know when my wife speaks to me about all that's in her heart, it's not just surface. Anybody else? Okay. So not only was she impressed by his wisdom, but was wooed by the house that he built. Right? She was wooed. The food at his table, his servants, the service of his waiters and their apparel, his cupbearers, his entryway to the temple. And after meeting with him and experiencing all of these things, it says there was no more spirit in her. So it says, where is that? At the end of verse 5, there was no more spirit in her. So what do we think that means? Any thoughts?
Well, mine says overwhelmed. With all the things that she had heard of him, was just one of the reasons why she wanted to find out. I apologize. She have heard so many wonderful things about Solomon that she felt needed to go and visit him, not just take the words of the people that was giving her this message. So when she went and she saw all the beautiful things and the things that everything was so organized and royalty and stuff, she got overwhelmed. She just said to herself, "Wow, this is what I have heard and more." So I think that she was just overwhelmed with how things was run in that way.
So Alyssa.
Is it possible that because she was a queen, so she walked in there a queen and then realized what a kingdom really looks like? So could it possibly be that she was humbled and was like, "Oh, I thought I had my stuff together, but my stuff is nothing." She brought all her spices and everything, all the riches, and it probably didn't even compare to what he already had.
Amen. That's a good thought. I didn't even think of that. Miriam?
I also want to say in the beginning of this chapter, it says that she came, which brought her honor to the name of the Lord. So she came not just looking for Solomon's wisdom, but also to see this kind of God that he was serving, right? And again, that society based everything on the gods that they served. So she most probably also wanted to see if this God was as great as everybody was saying. And she saw that he was a great God, and that he blessed Solomon greatly.
Amen. That actually leads me into my next point, right? Because we can't forget that this isn't just Solomon who has all this great wisdom, right? Yeah, obviously it's him, but God gave Solomon this wisdom. He didn't just have it, right? So let's go to chapter 3, 1 Kings chapter 3, and we're going to read verses 5 through 14. Any volunteers to read that? D.
5 to 13?
5 through 14.
14. Okay. 1 Kings chapter 3, 5 to 14. At Gibeon, Yahuwah appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask, what shall I give you?" And Solomon said, "You have shown great mercy to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in truth, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with you. You have continued this great kindness for him. You have given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. Now, O Yahuwah, my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David, but I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or to come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to be numbered or counted. Therefore give to your servant an understanding heart. Give to your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours?" The speech pleased the Lord, that Solomon had asked this thing. Then God said to him, "Because you have asked this thing, and have not asked long life for yourself, nor have asked for riches for yourself, nor have asked the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice. Behold, I have done according to your words. See, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that there has not been anyone like you before you, nor shall any like you arise after you. And I have also given you what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that there shall not be anyone like you among the kings all your days. So, if you walk in my ways, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days."
Thank you. So here we see, right? Solomon asked God for wisdom. God gave it to him. However, there were conditions. There were conditions. What were the conditions? Right there in verse 14. So if you walk in my ways to keep my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, I will lengthen your days. And as we'll see in the later chapters, Solomon turns away from God. All right, let's go back. So we're back at 1 Kings chapter 10. The queen is wooed by Solomon and all of the things that are around, right? And by him and his wisdom, and there was no more spirit in her. We spoke of what that might mean. Let's read verses 7 through 9. Mel?
Um, okay, 7 through 9. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told to me in wisdom and wealth. you have exceeded the report I heard. How happy your people must be, how happy your officials who continuously stand before you and hear your wisdom. I'm sorry, did you want me to do 9?
7 through 9. Yeah, you can read
Okay,
9. Thank
fine.
you.
Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord's eternal love for Israel he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness.
Thank you. So here we see Sheba. She's confirming the validity of the rumors and the talk and everything that she heard about Solomon and his kingdom, right? Verse 8, happy are your men and happy are these servants who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom. To me, that's one of the cooler things we'll see here, right? It says, happy are your men. That means his servants and the people under him, his staff, they were happy. And how important is that? They were happy to serve a king. This points to Solomon's leadership. He was a good leader, right? And good leader equals happy servants, happy people underneath you. Verse 9, she then praises the God of Israel. Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you, setting you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord has loved Israel forever. Therefore, he made you king to do justice and righteousness. 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 7, we see Hiram, 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 here, remember him, saying something similar. So after those from faraway lands, they see the fruits of Solomon and his kingdom, they say, praise Yah. Hiram did the same thing. Mel?
I just have a question. I don't know if we talked about this. I might have missed a little bit. But do we know where Sheba, she's the queen of Sheba. Where is Sheba?
Sheba. Yeah,
Her
it's
name was not Sheba. She was the queen of the Sabian kingdom.
Queen of Sheba.
Sheba is kind of like, I guess, the English version, you want to say. But when I looked it up in Google, it said that she was the queen of the Sabians. So we don't really know her name.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
have-
that she's the queen of the Sabians, and it's in Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula.
That's pretty much what I have. Sabian kingdom in southern Arabia or possibly Ethiopia.
Oh, okay.
D?
No, I was gonna say Ethiopia. I guess it's possibly.
We gotta say possibly before a lot of these things. All right, so we're good. Solomon had wisdom for justice and judgment, right? Which was another thing people wanted to. That's why they wanted to be in his presence. He understood human nature. He had scientific, natural knowledge. He understood politics and economic strategy. He wrote 3,000 proverbs and over 1,000 songs. A lot of songs, right there. All of which were the works of God.
He was the biblical Suno, the Holy Spirit led Suno.
Yeah. Right. Modern day Suno. Who wants to read verses 10 through 13? Paul.
Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, spices in great quantity, and precious stones. There never again came such abundance of spices as the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Also the ships of Hiram, which brought gold from Ophir, brought great quantities of almug, wood and precious stones from Ophir. And the king made steps of the almug wood for the house of the Lord and for the king's house, also harps and stringed instruments for singers. There never again came such almug wood, nor has the like been seen to this day. Now King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba all she desired, whatever she asked, besides what Solomon had given her according to the royal generosity. So she turned and went to her own country, she and her servants.
Thank you. So then the queen gives Solomon 120 talents of gold. You guys know, I'm going to do the math. So what's a talent? One Hebrew talent is equivalent to 75 pounds. I didn't know that. What do you think? 75 pounds. So in today's money, dollar, spot price of 1 ounce of gold is around $4,227, which actually has doubled over the last year. Just a side note. There's 16 ounces in a pound, right? So each pound of gold currently is $67,632. Okay? So we're going to multiply that by 75. So that's $5,072,400 in one talent. She gave him 120 talents. So that's $608,688,000 that she brought with her worth of gold. In addition to that, she gave spices in great quantity, precious stones. No one ever gave more spices than the Queen of Sheba to Solomon. Verse 11 revisits Hiram and the gifts that he gave to Solomon: gold, precious stones, and almug wood. Almug wood. Previously, we read about the cedar. Remember, we read about all that cedar wood that he brought. However, now we learn about almug wood. In 2 Chronicles, it's referred to as algum wood. A little different there. The most accepted view of what this wood was in modern day is called red sandalwood. And this wood grows in southern India. It has a deep reddish purple color. It's extremely hard and durable. And in the ancient world, it was prized for fine furniture, musical instruments, and decorative work, which fits the biblical description because in verse 12, it was used for the steps of the temple and harps and lyres for the Levites. Verse 13 describes that the Queen of Sheba received all that she desired, right? Whatever she asked, in addition to the royal generosity, it says. The royal generosity. The Hebrew phrase for royal generosity is mishlach yad ha-melech, or the hand of the king. These are gifts that the king freely chose to give out of the abundance of the palace. After this, the Queen of Sheba left to her own country. Now we're going to learn more about Solomon's wealth as we continue. I know it's been said that he was the richest man to ever walk the face of the earth. I'm not sure that's still true with people like Musk and Bezos walking around. But what Solomon had, they didn't have, right? He actually had physical wealth, not just a bunch of ones and zeros on a screen. So let's continue. Verses 14 through 15. Would somebody like to read that? Chris.
Hey, can I make a quick point before I read?
Yes.
So, the kings and queen of Sheba coming to inquire of Solomon's wisdom and see his success is what Deuteronomy said would happen. In Deuteronomy 4:7, if Israel keeps his Torah, it says that this will be your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has God so near to it as Yahuwah our God is to us, for whatever reason they may call upon him. So just wanted to point out this was like the fulfillment of the promise of Deuteronomy.
Awesome.
All right, 14 and 15 you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The weight of gold that came to Solomon yearly was 666 talents of gold. Besides that, from the traveling merchants, from the income of the traders, from the kings of Arabia and from the governors of the country.
Thank you. So Solomon was given 666 talents. Why 666? Why does it have to be that number? So he was given that amount of gold yearly. This came from international trade, royal tariffs, vassal king tributes, mining, etc. The gold he received from traveling merchants, income of traders, and from the governors, that wasn't even included in this number. So how much is 666 talents? It's $3,378,218,400. A lot of money. Erica, need a mic.
So my Bible has a side commentary about the number. It says 6 is the number of man, and 666 shows man's government in rebellion to Yahweh. Revelation 13, 16, 18.
Susan?
My thought when that was read is that he may have already been, headed in the wrong roads, and that would mean he's already superstitious, maybe, or pulling numbers from, not such great sources. That's my thought.
Yeah, noted. Good thought. Anybody else? All right, we'll continue. Verses 16 and 17. Who would like to read that? Paul.
And King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of gold went into each shield, and also made 300 shields of hammered gold. 3 minas of gold went into each shield. The king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon.
Thank you. So Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold and 300 smaller shields of hammered gold. I'm going to do the math again.
Hey, Rob, quick question while you do the math. Were these decorative shields?
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they are. I think they are decorative because they would actually be terrible for war. Gold is horrible. Metal for war.
They were put into the armory, though.
Were they?
So it could.
Oh, okay, you're right.
Doesn't mean they were being used.
No, you know what? You are right. It was in the armory. But yeah, fun fact though.
To show his greatness and to show everyone how much he had. It was kind of to show off more than anything. It wasn't really meant for war.
Yeah. So, 600 shekels of gold went into each large shield, and 3 minas of gold went into each smaller shield. So each large shield was worth, in today's dollars, $929,940. Each shield. Each smaller shield was worth $232,000. So if they were being used for battle, hopefully they weren't being used much, right? Hopefully they were taking care of those shields.
I could see these as the shield that like the king probably wore when he went out just for show or something like that. But the minute the Bronze Age came, these things would have been useless. That's
right, especially because there really wasn't that many of them. So 200 large shields and then 300 smaller shields. They would have needed really tens of thousands if they were actually to be used in a significant way.
Yeah, very good point.
So these shields were put into the house of the forest of Lebanon, which acted as an armory. Let's continue. Verses 18 through 20. Who would like to read? Susan?
And the throne had 6 steps, and the top of the throne was round at the back, and there were armrests on either side of the place of the seat, and 2 lions stood beside the armrests. The 12 lions were standing there, one on each side of the 6 steps. The like of it was never made in any reign. And all the drinking vessels of sovereign Shlomo, King Solomon, were of gold and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of refined gold, not of silver, for this was reckoned of little value in the days of Shlomo, Solomon. For the sovereign had ships of Tarshish at sea, and with the fleet of Hiram. Once every 3 years the ships of Tarshish came bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes and baboons.
Can you read the 25, please?
Oh, to 25? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And the sovereign Shlomo was greater than any of the sovereigns of the earth in riches and wisdom. And all the earth sought the presence of Shlomo, Solomon, to hear his wisdom which Elohim had put in his heart. And they were each bringing his present, objects of silver and objects of gold, and garments and armor and spices, horses and mules, the matter of a year by year.
Thank you. So we learn about a great throne of ivory with steps, armrests, lions, 12 lions to represent the 12 tribes of Israel. You guys go to Signal, I sent a picture of, it's a visual representation of what that could look like. I plugged those verses into Grok, and that's what it popped out. It's kind of cool. So if you guys want to go check that out, you can do so. Something like that. So verses 21 through 25, we read, all of the cups were made of gold. Nothing was silver. This points to the immense wealth of the kingdom during this time. Solomon had merchant ships with Hiram, and once every 3 years came bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and monkeys. Everyone on earth sought the presence of Solomon, and when they came, they brought silver, gold, garments, armor, spices, horses, mules, at a set rate year by year. So they paid him the same fixed tribute each year. It was in an organized and an ongoing way. This wasn't optional. It was part of Solomon's formal agreements and influence over surrounding nations. Any thoughts before we can, Erica?
Just one thing. My version says in verse 22, it ends with Tarshish would come bearing gold and silver and ivory and apes and peacocks. I don't know if anyone else's version says peacocks, but mine said adds peacocks to that.
Yeah, mine says also peacocks.
Oh, okay. And
Cool.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, exotic animals. D?
Yeah, I don't think apes are native to America, right? Okay, in case anybody out there thinks anything about America being where the real promised land is. Hi, guys. It's not real. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. So, no, I have a friend who was in Torah and went down the rabbit trail of thinking Israel's really in North America. It's here, yeah. Yeah. Salt Lake City, you know, the Salt Sea and City of Palms. Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah, no apes here, guys. No monkeys.
I'll read 26.
Yeah, you want to read 20? Oh, wait.
Can I
Miss
just
Susan.
ask a question? Because I thought that was odd, whether it's peacocks or baboons, apes. I wouldn't put an ape or a peacock or a baboon in the same category as gold and silver.
Right.
Like it. So I'm thinking that might be like a very egotistical thing. You know, if you have these creatures in cages and you're showing them off like that to me is the only value of them.
Sometimes it's also a value of just having an animal that not everybody would have.
Right.
So like typically, rich people also have different breed dogs, different breed cats, different breed animals. Rob and I do work for a particular individual that has a farm with a certain amount of animals that they go hunting that you can't hunt just like anywhere. So that's my point. It's also like it's a sometimes it's a, like you said, it's egotistical, And the way I would explain it is it's like a flex. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, he has money. He has peacocks, baboons, and chipmunks or whatever. I'm just saying, whatever, Right.
don't-
So yeah. So that's the point.
Don't let the Amazon parrot fool you. Mel?
No, I have a question. So I don't know if this is what you guys are saying. I don't know if I'm just not understanding. But isn't according to God's law, like aren't the kings not supposed to have all this lavishness?
Yeah, at the end we're gonna kind of get there, but Kyle,
Where does it say a king shouldn't have riches?
It's a
In the law.
it's a question, not a statement. But I was just curious if does this go against Deuteronomy 17 or does this not? Am I misreading that?
It will.
It will.
Yeah, we're gonna get there.
Oh, okay.
But
Sorry,
thank you.
I don't want to
No,
skip
I
ahead.
appreciate that. That's cool. You made that connection.
Sorry, I'm just confused.
No, thank you.
So verse
Oh yeah, can you read 26 to the end, please?
26. And Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, and he placed them in the cities of the chariots and with the king in Jerusalem. And the king made silver in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedars as the sycamores that are in the Shephelah, in parentheses it says low country, for abundance. And the horses that King Solomon had were brought from Egypt and from Cu. The king's merchants received them from Cu at a price. And a chariot came up and went out of Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. And so for all the kings of the Hittites and for the kings of Syria, they brought them out by their means.
Thank you, Erica. Solomon amassed a huge military force, including 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen. Solomon's merchants imported horses and chariots from Egypt and Cu. He purchased Egyptian chariots for 600 shekels of silver and horses for 150 shekels. Then he resold them to the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Syria. So why would he sell horses and chariots to Hittite and Syrian kings? Well, number one, for economic profit. 2, political leverage. And 3, for regional stability through dependent alliances, etc. So let's go to Deuteronomy 17, verse 16, as Mel pointed out. Deuteronomy 17, verse 16. Let's actually start from 14. So we'll read 14 to 16. When you come to the land which the Lord your God has given you and possess it and dwell in it and say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. You shall surely set a king over you, whom the Lord your God chooses. One from among your brethren you shall set as a king over you. You may not set a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Verse 16. But he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. For the Lord has said to you, you shall not return that way again. So let's go back. Question. Did Solomon violate Torah by doing this? Did he violate it? Any thoughts? Susan?
My thought is that it's fine in Yah's eyes to increase when it's all for his glory and the person amassing that wealth is giving all that glory to Yah. But once the person becomes selfish and they're thinking about themselves and they're cold towards Yah, that's where it's wrong.
He's also instructed to build a temple that's literally made of gold. That can't happen without gold increasing within the land. So there's twofold to this. So this is where the richness kind of plays a part. There's 666 talents of gold going to who? King Solomon. How much gold was going to the temple every year? How much silver was going to the temple? He increased with the Egyptian horses. He also broke like marrying Pharaoh's daughter, which is interesting. So he did a lot of things that we would call were political, we'll say. Yeah, but violated Yah's instructions to protect Israel specifically. Now, he made decisions to protect Israel that were political, so to speak. So this is where, like I said, I believe that the Deuteronomy specific command is that the king is not supposed to step on the house of God. The king should not be above the house of God. The king can't be poor, because if the king is poor, the house is poor, the children of Israel. The thing is if the king starts multiplying gold for himself, think of the curse that came to Samuel. So I'm bouncing around. I'm taking pieces from everywhere, okay? One of the curses that came to Samuel in 1 Samuel, when they wanted a king, was that he was going to take their tithes and their portions, and he was going to take their land and their daughters and their money and all that stuff. Now, God is saying in Deuteronomy similar things, but he's saying something specific for the king. The king's mind has to be on God first. So that's important, because is the Messiah going to be poor when he rules and reigns in Jerusalem? It says every bowl is going to be made of gold. And it's going to be written holy. I forget what it says. It says this in Zechariah 14:19. It says every bowl will have inscribed, holy is Yah. Something like that. They're made of gold. So, but where's the Messiah ruling and reigning? In his house or in Yah's house? And then the money that comes into Yah's house, it's for everyone, right? Solomon, it says specifically, and I think that's what makes this breaking Torah. The whole house of Israel, what Solomon is doing that's biblical, is everyone is rich in the land. What I think he's doing something that's unbiblical and ends up being his stumbling block is he ends up taking more of the majority instead of giving it to God. God should have been getting a majority, and he should have been getting a portion, even if it was a larger portion than everyone else. God should have got the majority of the portion. That's a huge facet of this. The gold that was coming into the land should have went through the Levitical priesthood. It should have went through the house of God. What he does, though, every time he gets something, he got this wood. What's the first thing that he did with the wood? He built steps for the temple of God, and then built steps for his house. He is essentially doing that, and it's easier said than done. I'm giving advice, hindsight, looking at this, because he falls, like he ends up falling. But what I can say based off of like what Deuteronomy is saying, and really what the blessings of following the Torah are. You're blessed to follow the Torah. You never have a lack. It's going to be a stumbling block. Gold, silver, finances, riches become a stumbling block. That's all I had to say. Do I think he's breaking Torah? Yes, and it's because of that. So I don't know where everybody else is going to be on it.
I had a thought. So in verse 29, it says that he was doing business with the Hittites. So that made me think that maybe that was another thing he wasn't supposed to do, because weren't they the enemies of Yah?
Yeah, well, during this time, they had alliances with those that they shouldn't have had alliances with. Right?
Yeah. So I think that was kind of what I was thinking. Like, I don't know if they were supposed to have alliances with like any of the ites at all.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Solomon knew that, right? Or was that of the days of his father? Like,
Well, he was the most wisest
Well,
man
yeah,
to ever
so
live,
he
right?
would
I
have
would
known-
assume
he would have known
probably
that.
would have known that, right?
Actually, part of the Torah, it's the king has to write out the Torah.
Well, that was my
Every
next
king,
step.
yeah.
Is like, where does that happen?
Yeah.
So he gets gold, but where does the Torah? Write the Torah out in gold, bro.
Yeah.
You got enough of it. Make golden scrolls.
Yeah.
Where's that? That's my point. That's what I think makes this
Yeah.
not lawful.
And I think it's pretty ironic that we see this right at the end of this chapter, and then it's almost a foreshadowing of Solomon's spiritual and political decline for the next chapter that we see, right? So it coincides with the next chapter. So let's continue. Let's go to Matthew 12, verse 42, and we're going to end with that.
Hey, I just want to kind of to add to what I was saying about the Hittites. So first verse of the next chapter says that part of the pagan women that he was married to were Hittites. So it leads me to believe this idea of political alliance didn't work out for him.
Yeah. Yep. Well said.
Which their goddess is Astra, and it's a goddess of having multiple partners, which is why David meets with Hiram and then comes back and has multiple wives after. Interesting, because then Solomon makes a connection with Hiram and then has multiple wives after. It's interesting that the Hittite people specifically have this particular goddess, and they have multiple partners. And then these kings tend to have the same problem. RV, before you move on, I want to make something clear real quick. God's temple is supposed to be the richest thing. Wherever God's dwelling place should be the richest thing in the land. The king should be the second. The people should be the third. That's how it should go. Because the king's portion would be from the people. God's portion would be from everyone. Does everyone understand? So it's God's system. I want to make sure this is clear. It's supposed to be one unit. So if everyone is poor, there's a problem, but we should be working together to become better. If one person is really, really rich, major issue. And that's what's cool. God's financial economic system is God-centered. It's him-centered, so that way your worship can never be on things. It's always on him. However, blessings would come forth where everyone would move as one train unit as being blessed.
So it's like an outpouring.
It's an outpouring.
From the house of God into
Right.
everyone else.
It's essentially people were supposed to look at the children of Israel as being rich. This is like one thing, like I would say, they're not supposed to be poor. They're supposed to have enough. I'm not talking about having multiple billions of dollars. I'm talking about like a shalom or a peace or a richness that's full, not just Egyptian horses and all these other things. A house that's fulfilled with what it has. And that's the thing that Solomon is breaking Torah piece by piece, is by building up riches that are outside of those things that end up becoming stumbling blocks for him later.
I was just looking at this Deuteronomy 17. It says that the king is supposed to write the instructions on with the Levites and read it every day so that he wouldn't forget and the citizens wouldn't forget. So it would have prevented him from breaking it had he been reading it all the time.
Well, that's a huge part of this, because Solomon becomes worshipped. This chapter is actually an act of worship. While it's cool as they are connecting it back to Yah, and I don't think that's like, I don't look at this quite, not worship's probably not the best word. It's like sovereignty, revering. And I think that's a very important aspect of this, because if you're not like walking with Yah, then pride comes in, sexual immorality comes in, the wickedness of your heart comes in, the imperfections of man come in. And that's why I say that, is a lot of people take this particular, and thank you, Rob, for giving me a couple of minutes on this. A lot of people look at this particular chapter and they always go to Deuteronomy 17. So when I heard Mel say it, I was excited to get into this, because I knew she was like, hey, doesn't this break? Why does it break it? And why it breaks it is because Solomon is not making the house of Yah rich. That's very important. The house of Yah should be the richest thing. Solomon's 666 talents of gold should have gone, 665 of them could have went to Yah. And if he got 6 talents of gold every week or month, would he have been poor? Right? So just something to think of.
Matthew 12. We're going to end there. Let's actually go to verse 38. We'll read 38 through 42. Anybody want to read that?
I'll read it.
Chris.
Matthew 12, verses 38 through 42. Then some of the scribes and the Pharisees answered, saying, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. But he answered and said to them, An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and indeed a greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and indeed a greater than Solomon is here. Love this one, bud, bro.
Yeah, good reading. Thank you. And that's Yeshua talking there. So just as the queen sought Solomon with eagerness, we are called to seek a far greater Yeshua, our Messiah, whose kingdom is built on righteousness and everlasting life. Solomon's splendor, it faded, but the glory of Christ will never diminish. And when he comes again, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that he is Lord. A greater than Solomon is here, and he is coming again. That's all I have, unless anybody else has any other comments or any questions. All right.
Amen.
Thanks, guys.
We are located.